Please join me in welcoming my friend, Jeff Weiner. Interviewing Jeff will be Shane Robinson, former CEO of Fusion.io, longtime HP executive, and of course a University of Utah graduate. We're really happy to have you here as well.
Thank you
so much.
Jeff, welcome to Utah.
Thanks for having me. It's great to be here.
I can tell you everyone here is very excited. So we're going to touch on a number of things tonight. Leadership, innovation, global workforce, all things that you're very passionate about. But before we start...
You going to the karaoke right away?
No, you had a great quarter, and there's some great things going on at LinkedIn. Why don't you give us a bit of a business update?
Yeah, we had a good quarter, solid quarter, good execution. Earlier this year, we announced a realignment of our sales force, which we do every year within our Talent Solutions business. It's our largest business where we help recruiters and hiring managers find the ideal candidate using our platform, help our membership find their ideal jobs. And earlier this year, we announced that we were going to be realigning a number of folks by region and by industry. It's something we've done every year. We typically do it later in the year. We don't do it to the same extent we did it this year. And there was a lot of learning that happened. And it was interesting to watch the way the team responded, because within a couple of quarters, we were able to see that paying dividends despite some of the lessons learned. And this last quarter, certainly you could see that and the benefit of a lot of hard work by our team. That was the Talent Solutions business. Our Marketing Solutions business continues to grow as we transition from traditional online advertising, which is more along the lines of display advertising, to what we call native advertising in the industry. And that's, interestingly enough, though Talent Solutions comprises over 60% of our business, Marketing Solutions, where ad sales is, with regard to sponsored updates or native advertising, is the fastest growing business in our company's history. So that particular business line grew triple digits, over 100%, which we were excited about. And then most recently, we began a new business line called Sales Solutions, which helps salespeople identify the right prospects, engage with those prospects, hopefully close the right deals. And we were very excited to announce a partnership for the largest single deal in the company's history across any of our businesses with EY, where we're going to work together to take our Sales Navigator platform to not only connect EY's north of 200,000 employees, their alumni network, over 800,000 people, and then help them create value for their customers. They have some of the largest, most valuable enterprise clients in the world. And what's really unique about the deal is the way they're going to be able to bring back this really unique perspective and business intelligence so that we can continually innovate and continue to advance that platform. So those are some of the things we touched on this last quarter.
Yeah, congratulations. It's clear that your leadership's having a big impact.
Thank you.
You've written and talked a lot about compassionate management as a leadership style. Can you tell us what you mean by that and how it works?
Yeah, so compassionate management has essentially become a first principle for myself, and it's become a foundational element for the way we manage and lead at the company. And when we talk about managing compassionately, we're talking about putting yourself in the shoes of the people that you're working with, rather than project onto them your own perspective or assume their intentions. And I think for everyone here in the audience tonight, you could think of, perhaps even today, a moment where you were working with someone and there was some tension. And we all have a tendency in those situations, it's very natural, there's nothing wrong with it, to knee-jerk to the fact that maybe the other person is angry with us, or they're becoming territorial, or they have some political motivation and trying to take advantage of ourselves. And more often than not, if we can just take a moment in those situations to take a step back, become a spectator of our own thoughts, especially when we become emotional, which is, as we all know, very, very challenging, but worthwhile if you can do, and put yourself in the other person's shoes, it's a complete game changer, because it may turn out that they're not coming at you with some nefarious intention, but rather they're having a bad day. You triggered them, and they're reminded of something that happened in their past that has nothing to do with you in that moment. They may not be up to speed on something that you're talking about. They may not have the same skills that you do, so they may be uncomfortable and feeling vulnerable. There's so many different reasons that they may be uncomfortable in that moment. Yet all too often, we have a tendency to match that anger and become antagonistic or defensive. So to the extent we can manage compassionately, you can connect with the other person. You can understand what's motivating them. You can understand why they may be feeling the way that they're feeling. And rather than make it a zero-sum proposition in terms of who's going to be right and who's going to end up, quote-unquote, winning, you can find an outcome that makes sense for both of you. And one of the things that's been integral towards managing compassionately and learning how to manage compassionately is understanding the difference between empathy and compassion, which in Western society, I know I did this, a lot of us tend to use empathy and compassion synonymously. But there's a fundamental difference between the two. Empathy is feeling what another living thing feels. Compassion is a more objective form of empathy, where you can maintain enough distance where you can actually do something about the way another person feels. So, for example, if another person's suffering and you're having an empathetic response, you too will be suffering, and there's very little that you can do about the situation. Whereas if you have a compassionate response, you recognize that they're suffering, maintain a little bit of a difference between yourself and that person, and then you can alleviate their suffering. And so I think that's a key fundamental to managing compassionately, and it's made a huge difference for the team at LinkedIn and our culture and our values.
So you're breaking new ground in a lot of areas with respect to leadership, and one of the things that you said that I really like is a manager is someone who tells people what to do, and a leader is someone who inspires people to do great things. How do you put that into motion, and if you can, what are the top 3 things that you focus on as you build leadership?
So for me personally, I have a pretty straightforward, simple definition of leadership. It's the ability to inspire others to achieve shared objectives. And exactly as you put it, that word inspire, that's a fundamental difference, in my opinion, between leadership and management. And I believe inspiration comes from 3 things. It comes from the clarity of one's vision, it comes from the courage of your convictions, and it comes from the ability to effectively communicate both of those things. And if you do, in fact, have a clear vision, the reason it's so important to have strong conviction is because there's going to be naysayers, there are going to be skeptics, there are going to be people who feel threatened by what it is that you're trying to accomplish. And so you have to continually move forward. And you have to carry that conviction in order to go over, around, or just through those barriers. And people respond very well to authentic conviction. When you're feeling it, when you truly believe in what it is that you're trying to accomplish, people are going to respond to that very positively. And to the contrary, if you are not feeling what it is that you're trying to accomplish, if you're getting up on stage in front of your employees and you're saying what you think they want to hear, if you're talking the talk but you're not walking the walk, people can sense that a mile away and they won't follow. So if you can effectively communicate what it is that you're trying to accomplish, if you have a clear narrative, if you have a clear sense of your mission, your vision, your objectives, your priorities, and not only what you're trying to accomplish, but how you want to accomplish it, in terms of clearly defining and codifying your culture and your values, people are going to want to be a part of that.
So this is really, really a nice accolade given your success. Glassdoor named you the highest rated CEO in 2014. Congratulations.
Thank you.
Those of us who've been CEOs watch Glassdoor. Why do you think that is? What are you hearing from your employees that lead you to that recognition?
So, I normally don't put a lot of weight in rankings or processes like that, but I will say that particular survey meant something because it came from the employees. And I think it touches on a lot of the things that you and I were just discussing, which is having a clear sense of what it is at LinkedIn that we want to accomplish. We're a mission-driven organization, and there's a shared sense of purpose, a very strong sense of purpose. And Senator Hatch nailed it, starting with our vision to create economic opportunity for every member of the global workforce, all 3 billion of them. when we first codified that, that was more a dream than anything else. You know, there's a clear delineation between mission and vision at LinkedIn. A mission is an overarching objective, measurable, realizable, and hopefully inspirational. Our mission is to connect the world's professionals to make them more productive and successful. And there's an addressable audience there of roughly 780 million knowledge workers or professionals in the world. And we just recently announced we surpassed 400 million members. And when we began to recognize the rate of growth and the fact we were well on our way towards at least realizing on a preliminary basis that first part of the mission to connect the world's professionals, we asked ourselves what would come next. And our vision, which was always our dream, it was true north, it was there to inspire. We started to say, what would it take to operationalize, creating economic opportunity for every member of the global workforce? And that's exciting stuff, to be able to operationalize your dream, to just be at a company that has the ability to make that possible. And I think our employees, our team, they respond very well to that sense of purpose. I think that's one. I think two, we believe very seriously in our culture and values. We didn't just take the time to codify our culture and codify our values. When at LinkedIn we talk about culture, we talk about the collective personality of our organization. And it's not just who we are, it's who we aspire to be. And that's important. I think that distinction is important because all too often, we've all been there. You'll be at an all hands and the executives of the company will be talking about the company's culture, and people in the audience are like, what company is that person talking about? And when you add this element of aspiration, it enables everyone within the organization to recognize you may not be able to do everything you want to be doing today, but you're going to reach and grow into ultimately who you want to be as a company. Our values are the first principles upon which we make day-to-day decisions and our operating principles. And, you know, if you had asked me about the importance of culture and values 10, 12 years ago, I would have, like a lot of people, rolled my eyes and probably busted out a Dilbert comic strip. And when I first got to LinkedIn as the CEO, I recognized how important it was. Nature abhors a vacuum. And if we didn't have a clearly codified sense of ourselves, the people that we were hiring from all these different companies were going to project into a vacuum what they wanted the company to be. So we knew and understood the importance of defining who we were and who we wanted to become. But today, I can honestly tell you, our culture, our values, they're arguably our most important competitive advantage. And I think that's a big part of the reason that the people want to be at LinkedIn.
So there's a lot going on, and there's no shortage of demand for leaders. Who of your peers do you think are great leaders, and why do you think they're leaders?
There's a lot of really amazing people, especially in our industry. I look at, and for different reasons, I look at Elon Musk, what he's doing. You know, we oftentimes at LinkedIn talk about the importance of dreaming big, and a moment ago I was alluding to this idea of operationalizing our vision, and then you see Elon not only trying to revolutionize transportation through sustainable energy and electric vehicles, but colonize Mars. And, you know, through SpaceX. So he's got SpaceX, he's got Tesla, he's doing both of these things simultaneously, just completely transforming the world, trying to protect humanity. It doesn't get much bigger than that in terms of vision and scale. And he's not just dreaming up these things, he's executing on them.
Yeah.
And I find that to be quite extraordinary. You look at someone like Jeff Bezos and what he's been able to do at Amazon over such a long period of time, remaining so true to his vision. And as he likes to talk about, remaining stubborn on vision, but flexible on the details to make sure he can continually execute. And you look at what he's not only been able to do with Amazon.com, we all know how successful that's been, but AWS, which was the underlying infrastructure that enabled them to build Amazon, and now is a full tech stack offering for third-party companies that has the potential to be bigger and more valuable than Amazon. That's quite extraordinary. You look at a guy like Reed Hastings and what he's been able to do at Netflix over a very long period of time, never wavering from his belief that they would be able to successfully navigate from a bricks and mortar business and shipping you your DVDs to ultimately transitioning into a broadband company, digital distribution, and the success that they've had there. In all these cases, these are leaders who are thinking big, never wavering from what it is that they believe in, the courage of their convictions, and then just continually executing over very long periods of time and creating enormous value.
It was interesting. We had Jeff here last year, I think.
You've had an amazing,
Yeah,
Senator Hatch, you look at the lineup of speakers that you guys have been able to have here, it's unbelievable.
A lot of
He's a hard guy to say no to. I think that may have some...
A lot of different leadership styles. So a tone at the top question. You've often said you do not want to be surrounded by yes men, and you encourage your team to...
Or yes women.
Or yes women. And you encourage your team to stand up for their ideas. How do you foster that throughout the company and encourage people to take those stands?
Yeah, it comes back to our values, and it comes back to walking the walk on our values. One of our most important values at the company is be open, honest, and constructive. And the words there were selected very specifically. Being open and honest, i.e. being transparent, in our opinion, wasn't enough. There's organizations that pride themselves on transparency, but they have a tendency to be very confrontational and antagonistic. And it can work for some companies, it wasn't going to work for us. So we added that element of being constructive, not just being transparent, trying to manage compassionately. And we'll throw that out there in a meeting. You'll hear it all the time. And we're not just doing it because it's a value and it sounds good, we're doing it because we mean it. And you're going to get the right answers. You're going to come to better, higher quality decisions when you're getting a diversity of opinions and people are speaking their mind. And if you're surrounded by people that are simply agreeing with you because of some hierarchical relationship, you're going to be in a lot of trouble. You want people challenging you. You want people challenging conventional wisdom. You want people taking, for us, what we call intelligent risks. And I think that's what makes us better. That's what enables us to improve and grow.
So let's switch topics. Innovation.
Okay.
You are hands-on leading product development. You're really promoting innovation throughout the company. How do you do that?
I think there's a few different elements of that. I think, one, you've got to have the right talent. You've got to have people that understand technology, especially in this day and age, and how technology evolves and how technology can make a difference, not only in terms of the product and services and the value that can be created for the end user and customer, but the underlying technology, the way that technology scales, the way it enables organizations to do things differently, faster, more productively, and to be able to take advantage of that. You have to be able to leverage that technology, not for the sake of technology, but to create value for your end users. So product sensibility and understanding unmet needs and how you can meet those unmet needs, how you can disrupt industries, how you can change the way things are done and apply technology for the sake of doing that. Business acumen is a part of innovation. You can create this extraordinary breakthrough and you could sell it at a loss for every unit sold. And, back in the late 90s, we remember how that went on the internet. People thought they'd make it up on volume, and that was not the case. And you need to understand how you can create long-term sustainable value at scale from these innovations. I think it's also incredibly important that you have the right leadership. And it goes back to what we were talking about earlier, which is being able to articulate a vision for innovation and where you want to take the organization, where you want to take that business unit, that product line, that underlying process, that piece of infrastructure. And then lastly, and I think most importantly, it comes down to resourcefulness. Because again, there's going to be people standing in your way. People are going to feel threatened by innovation. It fights that legacy way of doing things, the conventional wisdom. And people may be fearful of that. And so ultimately, regardless of whether or not you're at a small, 15-person startup, or you're at an organization like ours, 9,000 people, an organization like EY, 200,000 plus people, you've got to have people who are resourceful, who, regardless of what you throw in front of them, regardless of what kind of obstacles there are, they're just going to get it done. They just will things to happen. And so if you can combine those qualities with your team, you're going to have a chance. But it's not just about your talent. You also need a culture that supports risk-taking, that celebrates risk-taking, and that doesn't punish people for their failures, but enables the organization to learn from those failures and how you can continue to build and not make the same mistake twice. And then, whereas those first two things, the talent and your culture, I think, are fairly well understood, one of the things that I've come to learn at LinkedIn is arguably one of the most important qualities behind innovation, and that's the infrastructure. If you don't have an infrastructure that supports fast iteration and the ability to learn and the ability to test, it's going to be very challenging to be competitive in this day and age. And so you have to constantly invest not just in that product breakthrough, which is the glamorous stuff, and that's the stuff that everyone gets so excited to pursue. You've also got to invest in the underlying infrastructure and the processes supporting that infrastructure to facilitate the way in which the organization can make better decisions faster and truly scale the innovation. So I think people, culture, and infrastructure would be three things to think about.
So innovation's been a challenge for the 40 years I've been in technology. It's obviously one of the big differentiators among companies. But one of the questions is, how do you coach, or do you have special coaching for individuals to be more innovative?
Well, there's coaching and there's coaching to be more innovative. So let's start with coaching. And I think coaching in and of itself is a learned skill. And it's a learned habit, especially when you're talking about a startup that's experienced hypergrowth and the way in which that startup will evolve and the way the management and the leadership of that startup will evolve. Because oftentimes at startups, they're successful because they're solving problems. They're solving problems very quickly. And the founders of these companies have a knack for solving problems. And that skill can also become an Achilles heel as the organization begins to scale, because those same founders or those same leaders that were there in the beginning and could solve all those problems and were really good at it, which is one of the reasons they're running the company and the company's having some success. Well, their natural tendency when someone comes to them with a problem is to solve the problem, as opposed to taking the time to actually coach that individual on how to solve the problem. And better still, coach that individual on how to coach the people on their team. And that's when you start to experience true scale, when you don't always need to be in the room and you don't always have to be there to solve the problem or put out the fire or react. So coaching in and of itself, independent of whether or not it's driven towards innovation, I think can be a really important way and part of the way in which organizations scale. In terms of coaching on innovation, it's creating an environment where people can dream big. And not just dream big in terms of pie in the sky, they can dream big and get it done. And you have to optimize for those two things. You know, just having the dream, just thinking about the vision is not enough. We could brainstorm all day long, but if we can't make it happen, if we can't execute on it, it's not going to be creating much value. But again, encouraging risk-taking, and we like to talk about intelligent risk-taking, where we're thinking about the risk-reward relationship, and we're trying to be patient and look for those opportunities that have disproportionately high reward relative to the risk. And if you can find those moments and find those opportunities, you can put the right people on those opportunities. You create the right sense of accountability, so there's clear leadership, and they're resourced properly, they're set up to be successful. Some amazing stuff can happen.
So in that context, how do you think about the gig economy, the on-demand economy, and LinkedIn's role in that?
So I think the gig economy is here to stay. I think work is becoming increasingly fractionalized. I think people are increasingly, particularly with the millennials, they're starting to become increasingly empowered in terms of when they work and how they work, working remotely, working from home, working on a per gig basis, on a per task basis, working across multiple companies simultaneously. The role of LinkedIn there is not really any different than the role of LinkedIn within the traditional professional world, which is once we understand who you are in terms of your professional identity, your skills, your experiences, and perhaps most importantly, your objectives and what it is you're trying to accomplish. And once we can facilitate the way in which you connect to other people, former colleagues, current colleagues, potential prospects, people you'd like to be working with or for, when you leverage professional identity and you combine that with one's network and their relationships, that's how you connect people to opportunity. And you can connect them to opportunity via gigs and tasks and part-time work and work in which they're empowered. You can connect them to full-time jobs at companies where they're working for somebody else. Those same raw materials, those same building blocks are going to be prevalent in regardless of which of those two paths you pursue. And so we want to continue to invest in those two areas, as well as leveraging both identity and leveraging relationships to facilitate the way in which people are sharing knowledge, professionally relevant knowledge. because the days where you went to school, learned a skill, and then had a job for the rest of your life,
Gone.
yeah, those days are over. So the world is changing so quickly. The rate of technology and innovation is accelerating so quickly. This notion of continuous learning has become fundamental. And that's a big part of what LinkedIn is focused on.
So I'm a LinkedIn user, but I didn't really appreciate the depth of what you're doing until I started doing a little homework for this interview. LinkedIn's a company that McKinsey calls an online talent platform. It's a general category of companies that McKinsey estimates will add $2.7 trillion to the global GDP by 2025. Your vision is to create an economic opportunity for the global workforce. What innovations are you developing to accomplish that?
So one of the things that we're most excited about at the company is this idea of operationalizing our vision, creating an economic opportunity for every member of the global workforce. And I've never been a part of a company that was in a position where it could very realistically have an opportunity to operationalize its vision. The vision was true north. It was something to reach for. It wasn't necessarily something that was influencing roadmap decisions or day-to-day priorities. And yet, a few years ago, when we recognized we were growing faster than we originally anticipated, we originally codified our mission to connect the world's professionals, those 780 million people, in early 2009. When I joined the company in December 2008, we had 32 million members. So today, we just announced 400 million members. So a couple of years ago, we recognized we were going to be nearing the midway mark on 780 plus million professionals. And we started asking ourselves, what's next? How would we go about manifesting our vision statement to create economic opportunity for all 3 billion members of the global workforce? And the answer was to create the world's first economic graph. So what we're trying to do is digitally map the global economy. So what do we mean by that? We'd like there to be a profile on LinkedIn for every member of the global workforce, all 3 billion plus people. We'd like there to be a profile on LinkedIn for every company in the world. There's between 60 and 70 million companies when you include small and medium-sized businesses. We'd like there to be a digital representation for every job availability in the world. There's roughly 20 million of those that are digitally accessible. We'd like there to be a digital representation for every skill required to obtain those jobs offered by those companies, tens of thousands of standardized skills. We'd like there to be a presence on LinkedIn, a digital presence for every university, higher educational organization, or vocational training facility that enables people to acquire the skills to get the jobs offered by those companies. And then we want to create a professional publishing platform that enables any individual, company, or university to share their professionally relevant knowledge if they're interested in doing so. And we want to take a step back, and we want to allow capital, all forms of capital, intellectual capital, working capital, of course, human capital, to flow to where it can best be leveraged. And in doing so, we want to help lift and transform the global economy. When we originally started talking about this a few years ago, it sounded like science fiction. People said, yeah, that sounds good. Okay, now you got to get back to your day-to-day. And what we started to do was ask ourselves what it would take to operate at the scale of the economic graph. And so, for example, we had always thought there were roughly 300 to 400, 500,000 white-collar jobs that we wanted to target on LinkedIn. But there's 20 million job opportunities out there at any given time. And trying to access 20 million job opportunities on your platform requires a completely different way of doing things. So sure enough, we went out, we acquired a world-class company called Bright, and within about 18 months, we had increased the number of jobs on LinkedIn by over 10x. So there's well north of 4 million jobs on LinkedIn today, and we're on our way to 5 million, 7 million, 10 million, ultimately 20 million. When our publishing platform started, it was 500 professional luminaries, CEOs and world leaders who were sharing their professionally relevant knowledge. And it was so successful, we decided to open it up. And then we started thinking about what would it take for every member of the global workforce to be able to share their professionally relevant knowledge. Because if you think about it, all the world's professional and business intelligence resides within the minds of our members. So imagine unlocking that and indexing it and making it searchable for anyone who's trying to tap that collective wisdom and knowledge. And so sure enough, today, that platform is now available to over 230 million people. We generate over 150,000 unique long-form posts every week. So it's changed the way in which we are building our products and services. And then you start to dream about what's possible with a graph like that. And one of the things we're most excited about with regard to the economic graph, and think about this, we can pick any locality anywhere in the world, and we can identify the fastest growing jobs within that locality, the skills required to obtain those jobs, assess the aggregate skills of the workforce within that locality. And when the gap between the skills required to obtain the jobs and the skills of the workforce exceed a certain threshold, we can equip vocational training facilities and junior colleges, even four-year universities, with our data, so that ideally they could create just-in-time curriculum, so they can train the workforce in that locality for the jobs that are and will be, and not the jobs that once were. So that's an example of what we could do with that.
Yeah, this economic graph that's a really big idea. But there are lots of noisy sources of economic data out there. Lots of hand-wringing going on, anybody who watches CNBC. How do you distinguish yourself in that context? How do you get the economic graph adopted?
So, you raise an excellent point, and it starts with the quality of our data. And it starts with creating an experience where we're creating enough value for our membership, for our customers, that we continually generate high-quality data that can be leveraged for the use cases that I mentioned earlier. You look at some of the traditional means in which countries measure economic growth, or measure economic opportunities, or measure gaps in terms of the creation of economic opportunities. And you're absolutely right. I mean, it's very noisy.
Yeah.
Noisy to the point where people historically have stopped trusting some of that data, and it can become unreliable. And what's so exciting about the world we live in today, and it's not just LinkedIn that has access, people love to refer to big data, but you take a look at what's possible on our platform, we can really, truly, for the first time with regard to this context, eliminate the guesswork. There should be no reason anyone has to guess with regard to what's happening across those pillars or dimensions. And it's really just a byproduct of our ability to be able to leverage that data and continually operate at the scale of the economic graph. And the only thing preventing us from doing that is time.
It'll be exciting to see how that plays out. So the Bureau of Labor Statistics says there's 5 million open jobs in the U.S. today. Talk a little bit about why you think those remain unfilled with people who are unemployed or underemployed.
Yeah, that number actually continues to grow. I remember when I first started citing that statistic, it was down around 3 million. Today it's 5.8 million. It will probably soon surpass 6 million. 6 million available jobs in this country. 6 million available jobs. We talk about the unemployment rate and how it continues to drop, and it's hovering north of 5%, and that's certainly much better than it was, following the financial crisis 2008. It was roughly double that. A lot of progress happening, but 5.8 million available jobs, despite the fact that we've got not only unemployed people, but underemployed, those in temporary work that are looking for full-time jobs, and a segment of the population called the marginally attached that have been looking for work for so long they've kind of given up. And that's one of the things that we're so excited about, is leveraging this data to understand the skills that people have, the skills that are required to obtain these jobs, and then not only to recommend what skills you need to get the job that you're looking for, but to actually be able to do something about it. So we recently acquired a company called lynda.com, which is a world-class learning and development platform. And we were always excited about our ability to connect our members to opportunity. You come on LinkedIn, you do a search for a job, you see a job post, we know the skills that you have, we know the skills that are required, and historically we could then recommend that you obtain certain skills, you obtain certain certifications. Now, through Lynda, and as we continually open up Lynda and our learning development platform, we can help you learn the skills to do something about that opportunity. And whether it's veterans, whether it's the unemployed, whether it's the newly graduated, or anyone already in a job that's looking to advance their career, that's one of the things we're most passionate about at the company, is connecting our membership to opportunities like that.
So you're doing a lot of really innovative things, and I was reading about one of the projects that you have in the works with Denver and Phoenix to address this middle skills gap.
Yep.
Talk a little about that.
Yeah, you're talking about our LinkedIn Cities initiative.
Right.
And LinkedIn Cities stems from this idea of manifesting our vision and developing the world's first economic graph. And rather than talk about it, and it is compelling, we wanted to do something about it. We wanted to start learning and experimenting as quickly as we could. So we're partnering with local government, we're partnering with local universities, we're partnering with local NGOs and nonprofits to leverage our platform and essentially create economic graphs for specific cities. And you mentioned Phoenix and Denver, and it will be more broadly in Colorado as well. We're doing it in Manchester in the UK. There are some other countries around the world that have expressed interest in working with us. And we're building, for starters, a training finder so that people can understand what middle-skilled jobs are out there. And then we can connect them with the training they need to obtain those opportunities. And we're working with some extraordinary organizations, some very forward-thinking groups, and truly visionary people in terms of identifying these opportunities and making a difference. And middle skills is kind of a terminology that people may be a little less familiar with, but in terms of lower skills or skills historically that were associated with a high school diploma, that's not necessarily enough these days because of the offshoring and because of automation. And then, of course, you have four-year universities. Those are highly skilled. The middle skills are in between. They're beyond a high school education, but don't necessarily require a four-year degree or a university degree. And there are so many opportunities in the country right now for technicians and welders and machinists, et cetera. And that doesn't require people learning computer science, for example. It requires vocational training that we're more than capable of providing in this country. And so we can continually close that gap and fill those 5.8 million available jobs.
It's exciting. Last question. And we really appreciate you being here.
Yeah,
it's been exciting to have you talk to the community here. This is a collection of the technology leaders from throughout the state. We're not really in Silicon Valley, but we're close. Since you're going to fly home tonight,
it's only an hour and 20-minute flight, by the way. I didn't realize that until tonight. It's pretty close.
Well, do you have some specific advice for this group of leaders or observations on Utah?
Yeah, I was talking to the governor earlier, and you've got some pretty amazing stuff happening here. 3.5% unemployment. You look at the skills of the aggregate workforce here. You look at some of the jobs being created. You look at some of the highest growth companies. I was sitting next to Josh earlier at Domo, and regardless of the fact that he's up here in Utah, in Silicon Valley, Domo is being applauded for being one of those hyper-growth companies that has just extraordinary potential, and obviously he's not the only one. There's a lot of people in this audience tonight who are pursuing similar paths, and I would say continue doing what you're doing. I don't know that you need any advice from me. It's incredibly impressive what you've been able to do, not just your individual companies, but what you're doing together as a community. Continue to educate, we had a chance to meet, the senator and I and the governor, some of your brightest students that are pursuing STEM studies. And the senator was talking to all of them, trying to encourage all of them to continue to pursue their education before they're pursuing opportunities. Continue to educate. Continue to invest not only in primary school education and four-year programs, but vocational training as well. Go after those middle skill positions. They're so easily overlooked, especially in a day and age where everyone's so focused on innovation and so focused on technology. Continue to dream big. There should be no limitations in this day and age. It's extraordinary what's possible through technology and through the talent that we've all been able to tap and generate. So I would say continue doing what you're doing. You should be incredibly proud.
Thanks again for being here.
Sure. Thank
you
for having me.
Awesome.
Thank you, gentlemen, for a lively and thought-provoking discussion. We greatly appreciate it. I know it was very engaging and extremely insightful. You're so articulate, Jeff. Got us, I know several of us, thinking very deeply about some of the opportunities that we all have. Jeff, we really appreciate you being here. And on behalf of UTC, we'd like to present you with a gift. Really, and we know that you have many things that you're dedicated to, and in addition to what you shared. But to show our appreciation for taking the time to be with us this evening, UTC has given a donation in your name to an organization on one of the boards that you serve on, donorschoose.org, just to help 7 schools here in Utah with their teacher STEM projects and requests that they have. So I'd like to present that to you.
Thank you so much. Very much appreciated. Thank you. Thank you, everyone.